Covert Training 3. Without a doubt, the most controversial and intensely debated survival skill of the entire The Last of Us Factions multiplayer. But is Covert Training 3 really as overpowered as so many players claim? And do silenced weapons actually increase Covert Training 3's effectiveness? In this video, I will attempt to address these questions through two methods. First, by presenting a simple case both for and against the existence of Covert Training 3. Second, I will show footage of numerous gameplay tests that I personally performed on a nondescript alternate account. Lastly, I will share my thoughts and conclusions in an effort to not only better understand Covert Training 3's impact on the current Factions multiplayer, but also on any future iterations as well. When measuring up the debate, the case against Covert Training 3 is far easier and lengthy to explain, so we'll start there. It's not difficult to loathe Covert Training 3. The most obvious example is this month's community challenge, Hawkeye July. This challenge can become incredibly and exponentially more difficult when squaring off against an entire squad of Covert Training 3 users. At the core of the arguments against Covert Training 3 is not what it gives you, but what it negates for everyone else. Covert Training 3 is the only survival skill that negates two core mechanics, listen mode and marking. But that's not all it negates. This singular survival skill completely negates three other survival skills: Sharp Ears, Hawk-Eyed, and Damage Marker. At 5 loadout points, it costs less than Crafter 3 and First Aid Training 3, two team-focused survival skills. Lastly, Covert Training is the only survival skill that gives you a craftable item, a shiv, for free. Now, sure, Second Chance and Fortitude can both grant you a free health kit, but they're conditional, and you can literally find free medkits strewn all over the maps. The case for Covert Training 3 is both brief and fairly weak. Sure, you can call it an integral part of a tactical, stealth-based third-person shooter, offering a variance of playstyles and pacing which separates it from the usual twitchy and repetitive Call of Duty-style multiplayers. And sure, you can highlight the variance of gameplay and stealth aspects, but it's difficult to justify this single survival skill nullifying two core mechanics and three other survival skills. Now, if Hawkeye 3, Sharp Ears 3, and Damage Marker 2 somehow allowed you to make Covert Training 3 users markable, then I think in this case it would be okay and it'd be much, much stronger. However, I feel Covert Training 3 in its current state, much like the tactical shotgun, should never have been included and only detracts from the overall enjoyment of the multiplayer. Now, I feel it's important to put these viewpoints to the test, and I will be doing so by playing a series of matches using a strict Covert Training 3 and Silenced Variable Rifle loadout. Quite honestly, this can be considered maybe the most broken loadout in all of Factions. Also, in order to keep the lobbies clear from any outside influences, I used an unremarkable alt account so that my YouTube presence wouldn't change how others played. Now there's a few specific details I would like you to observe during this initial match. Please make note of my pace, my routes, my view angles, and the amount of time I actually spend in the crouching position. This match was the first non-late join match I played with this test loadout, and it turned out to be one of the most incredible matches I've ever played. I thought it was pretty incredible that my first down here on Lakeside was a shiv of all things. Very, very fortunate. Now, in this next series of downs, I'm convinced that my opponents had a very, very difficult time actually figuring out where I was shooting from. Also, make note of my fellow Covert Training 3 user with the burst rifle. Our use of Covert Training 3 results in each of us squaring off against each other at close proximity numerous times over the course of the match. And I'm fairly certain I get the best of him in each of those encounters. Now, I have a theory on why that might be the case, which I'll share with you after the next time I down him. This series of engagements here really shows how my inability to be marked saves me from being pursued while my opponent is simultaneously marked with Hawkeye 2 or 3. This is a beautiful juxtaposition of the two survival skills, and it allows me to both dispatch my opponent quickly and safely revive my downed teammate. Here's the Covert Training 3 theory that I mentioned before. I believe some players who run Covert Training 3 religiously become so comfortable with getting the jump on others that their quick reactions to the unexpected slowly become dulled over time. I feel that's what happened in every encounter with this Covert 3 user. To go back to one of my initial questions, does a silencer increase Covert Training 3's effectiveness? Yes, absolutely it does. Dana Roy recently put out a video asking if a silencer has a placebo effect in improving your aim. You should check it out sometime if you haven't already. For me, I don't see a placebo effect necessarily, but rather I notice that I get way more shots off uncontested, where my opponents can't figure out where I am hitting them from. One technique that I've used in a few matches to great success is what I call a holding position. Now, what I identified as a good holding position is an area like this balcony corner on Lakeside, or the fire truck on Hometown. They're both elevated, you can see behind cover, and with Covert 3, they can never really tell exactly where you will pop up and continue firing from. Plus, they have easy exit points should someone run up and try to throw a molly or a different throwable in your direction. I think some of you may have picked up on it by now, but I absolutely shredded this team, and most other teams that I played against with this loadout. But there's a good reason that this happened. And no, it's not just simply throwing on Covert Training 3 and a silenced weapon. That won't guarantee high down totals. This Sun Tzu quote from The Art of War explains it perfectly. Strategy without tactics is the slowest route to victory. Tactics without strategy is the noise before defeat. And this leads to what I call the Tao of factions. Play too passively, and you'll likely have very little or a negative effect on your team. Play too aggressively, and you'll be killed quickly and often. Finding that perfect balance of deception, patience, and overwhelming aggression is the key to becoming a master of factions. Honestly, if you haven't checked out my Essential Faction Strategy Guide, you may want to do so now and keep this idea of the Tao of factions in your mind. Now, some of you may have been saying, that's just one match. You got really lucky in that one match and it's just a one-off. And that's understandable. But really, if you look at the whole session, and I'm going to show both clips and the end results from all of these matches, you will see that it is very, very impressive totals. Basically, in conclusion, I've come to the understanding that running a silencer and Covert Training 3 is basically playing on easy mode. It just makes it so much easier. And if you then add some of the essential faction strategies that I mentioned in that guide, all of a sudden you are picking teams apart left and right. So with that having been said, I'm going to show the rest of this clips. Please leave a comment and let me know what you feel about Covert Training 3 and silencers in general, and what you see as the future of factions, if you would like factions to go in a completely different direction, or if you're completely fine with how it is so far. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll catch you all soon. Have a good one. Cheers.